Hey Minot, 2020 is the year for more. Yes, it's the U.S. Census season, and with it, Minot could see more. More opportunities for business, more federal funding for roads, for our schools, and for our community. Take part in something more. Take the census, because for us, more means more. Visit minotnd.org to learn more.
It's the experience, right? Yeah.
I call to order the Franchise Committee meeting. It is Monday, May 18th. Roll call, please.
Olson,
Here.
Wolski,
Here.
Straight,
Here.
Padragula,
Here.
Pittner.
All right, so this committee does not meet very often, and so I thought it would just be a good little reminder to review the purpose of this committee. And I did find it on the city website in case anyone is curious. The purpose for this committee is to coordinate the efforts of the city council and utility companies in establishing limited franchise to provide electrical service, telephone service, natural gas service, cable television, and street lighting to the city of Minot. So as we are here today, we are going to consider the franchise application from Montana Dakota Utilities, and I believe we have someone on the phone. Is that correct? All right. We're going to see if we can get your volume turned up a little bit, possibly. A little difficult to hear. Why don't you talk a little bit so we can hear you a little more? That is perfect. All right. Go ahead, sir. All right. Is there anything that you want to start out with initially, or do you want to take questions from the committee? What works best for you? All right. Are there any questions from the committee? Alderman Wolski.
Chairman Olson, Mr. Olson, I've read through the agreement. It looks pretty straightforward. This stuff comes up periodically. It looks like about once every 20 years. So unless you have any particular comments, I'm prepared to offer a motion in support of the recommendation, and then we'll see it at council this evening.
Alderman Wolski, I don't have any comments. So it went through the attorney processes already, so it should be good.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Alderman Straight. Any discussion? Alderman Padragula.
Thank you, ma'am. This isn't so much directed at this specific one, although this is the first time in a while we've talked about these things. The two questions I have to do with insurance coverage. I noticed that MDU is required to carry $1 million. That doesn't seem like a whole lot of money. And I understand that only would be to protect the city itself, not anyone who might suffer any damages as a result of any incident or anything like that. But I'm drawn to the situation that happened a couple of years ago outside of Andover, Massachusetts, where the gas company sent in at incredibly high pressures into residential areas and blew up 3 towns, basically, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of damage, settled for $147, I think. And there have been similar utility accidents. I'm familiar one outside of San Francisco. California's been plagued by those. They have irresponsible companies as opposed to MDU and Xcel and people like that around here. But $1 million doesn't strike me as a whole lot of money, again, just for the city property involved. It pays for things like overtime for firefighters, and that just seems like a very, very small amount. So I guess I'd want to get some thoughts on that and see if that could be heightened at least to what a normal residence carries. I wish the mayor were here because he's our insurance consultant, he's our insurance expert. But I was thinking somewhere along the line of $2 or $3 million just as a minimal kind of amount. The other concern I have is why we don't have a franchise fee. Now I understand, and please understand, Mr. Olson, I'm not suggesting we soak MDU, not at all. I mean, ultimately anything like that has to be passed along to the customers, and that's the way it should be, or the investors. But I looked at my cable TV bill, and I was paying $641 a month for my cable as a franchise fee. And I understand from the city attorney and engineer that we don't have franchise fees on the other utilities apart from Midco. So it seems kind of strange that we have, a fee on one kind of utility and not on another. And I don't want to hold up the approval of this franchise, but I think that's something we should be talking about as a group, I think, to get some uniformity, to get some consistency, and also look at it as a potential source of revenue. We've talked about, increasing our inspection fees and things like that, so property tax owners aren't soaked. And I think this would be something worth talking about and looking at. Again, not to hold this up, certainly, but this whole general issue of to what extent can we help pay for some of the services that we give to utilities and get back in terms of a franchise fee. I know there was a situation a couple years ago at a house just down the street from me where there's a gas odor, and I called it in, and the fire department came, and then a few minutes later MDU came, and they sure enough found a leak, and they fixed it. Our firefighters were tied up, 3 of them or 4 of them were tied up. Police car came, in fact 2 police cars, and that's the normal cost of doing business for the city. But it seems like there might be maybe some compensation for those kinds of things. And again, I don't want to in any way criticize MDU. I think they do a good job. The rates are very low as far as I'm concerned. But the city does incur expenses because of the gas system and probably the other systems. There's a similar situation over the winter where a wire was down from Midco in one of the parks. And we sent out our nearest piece of fire equipment was the big ladder truck. 4 guys and a $1 million piece of equipment to check out a line. They were there maybe half an hour. So there are costs like that involved, and I wanted to raise that as an issue for us to think about and discuss. And perhaps the better place for this would be as part of the budget process. But I wanted to put that on the radar and just raise that as an issue.
Alderman Padrigula, did you have any questions in that, or it was more just discussion points?
I guess a question for the MDU guy, what typical insurance policies or coverages are like, and the other question would be, what can he tell us from the industry perspective about franchise fees, and is it common to have them, or is it not common, or what?
Mr. Olson.
I can't comment on really any other town. Just like Bismarck, Williston, Dickinson, Devil's Lake, Jamestown. I don't have that answer right now. As far as the insurance goes, we are a self-insured company, so for what's that worth, I don't know, but I could certainly find out about franchise fees in other communities that we serve.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that could answer the question related to insurance, or? Yes, City Attorney.
Alderman Olson and other members of the committee, I provided some information earlier today to Alderman Padrigula about other franchises that I could find for gas distribution services in the state. The 3 that I found that have franchises with MDU don't have any franchise fees. And 2 of those, Bismarck and Williston, have the same $1 million insurance as the city of Minot. Watford City has a little bit more of a variety of insurance. They have $1 million for property damage, $1 million for personal injury, $2 million for aggregate events, $2 million umbrella coverage, and $1 million automobile. So a little different there. But again, no franchise fees. 2 of the 3 leave it open, just as our draft does, for future potential fees, but 1 doesn't reference them at all. And then some of the other cities on the eastern side of the state have agreements with other companies, and they do have percentage-based franchise fees. And then 1 doesn't have any insurance requirements, and the other one I'm not sure on their insurance requirements. So just a little more information on that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lakefield.
Mrs. Olson, members of the committee, I did do some checking with the insurance requirements on some of the other developers' agreements and things like that we have had recently. It's been a while since we've had a franchise agreement come through. But the $1 million in liability coverage is something that has been consistent with recent development agreements. So if that's something that we are looking to change, one of the most recent ones, the Blue on Broadway, had the same $1 million requirement, but also had a stipulation for an additional umbrella policy. That is always something that we could look at.
All right, thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson. I don't have any questions. Mr. Olson, I appreciate you being here today, Kurt. Thanks. I guess that it's more of a conversation, I think, for staff as you move into the budget season. We had a discussion just kind of on the kind of periphery a number of years ago about franchise agreements as a whole, especially as it pertained to the landfill. And it seems to be a discussion that I think would be important for the upcoming council to at least consider. I'm going to be very supportive of this today, but it's just the rarity of this. To your point, Ms. Olson, this is the committee meeting here. We don't do it that often, but Alderman Padragula raises good points. You know, I'll say myself as there's more exposure in the food industry, but I have $3 million insurance policies at various events compared to $1 million. This is a massive corporation of MDU. Clearly there's that it's based on exposure, I'm sure. And also, the statewide regulation through the Industrial Commission sets the fees, I'm pretty sure. So we're not debating that here today. It's just kind of the pass-through of I support what's being discussed today, and I think there's, for the general public, if there are additional questions, that they have to be channeled kind of to the right. The Industrial Commission, if people feel strongly about their gas fees or something to that effect, but that's not on us to pass today.
Mr. Lakefield.
Mrs. Olson, members of the committee, one thing I would just like to point out really quickly, that when we talk about these insurance limits, that's the limits of coverage that the insurance company will provide. If MDU is a self-insured company, when we're looking at limits of insurance, that is what your insurance company will help you with. That doesn't mean that that is the extent of your liability. If there is some type of liability that arises, that's just what the insurance company is going to be obligated to pay. If they're self-insured, they're dealing with that risk on their own anyway.
Okay.
So it's maybe a little bit of a different way of looking at it then.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned.